mention the book, You and IMPACTIFI. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Somewhere in the free world. Hopefully you're watching us, not in the non-free world. If you're watching us live, thank you. If you're watching the replay, thank you. This is another exciting and educational episode of Tech Tuesdays.
How many are we up to, Jeff?
We are up to 37.
37 shows with this partnership. Pretty exciting.
Go. I'm excited.
What are we doing at the 50th one? We throwing a big event with South Florida Tech Hub?
We are having a party.
We are. Where's it going to happen? Let's envision this party.
It's going to be here in the studio.
Okay, it's in this studio. I'm sure our producer is going to be really excited that's in the studio.
It's going to be standing room only in this studio. So speaking
of full 12 and a half people, right?
Yes.
I'm assuming we're invited by default.
You are, and all our previous experts of the day are invited. But what is Tech Tuesdays? As Jason mentioned, it is a partnership between the Owwll app and South Florida Tech Hub. Quick intro, I'm Jeffry Ullman, Director of Membership and Partner Engagement. If you're not a member of Tech Hub, reach out to me on Owwll. If you are a member, thank you. By the way, John, thank you for being a member. Sean, thank you for being a potential member. To be continued. But the Owwll app, if you do have the Owwll app, thank you. If you haven't downloaded the Owwll app, you have time to go download it now. And we will be making it 1 to 2 calls later in 30 or 40 minutes or so. So download it, configure it, and we might call you. If you use the referral code, thank you. We'll give you $10 to start. So a couple of quick announcements with Tech Hub. One of our 4 core pillars is community, and that also includes helping underserved communities. That is, what do we mean by underserved communities? Women in tech. There aren't enough women in tech. I think we would all agree with that. So South Florida Tech Hub has many women's empowerment events, and our 6th annual Women's Empowerment Breakfast is this Friday. I think we still have a few seats available. It's going to be at City Furniture headquarters, which is interesting because they normally don't open it to the public. So you get to see behind the scenes of City Furniture, which is a very interesting company. So it's out on Eventbrite if you want to go ahead and register and attend. Thank you, City Furniture, for being the host. And Stephanie Carton, the founder of Entrepreneurster, is going to be the main speaker. I have heard her speak. She's great.
Awesome.
This one of the other underserved communities we think are software developers. The IT industry couldn't exist without software developers. So we have an annual event. There aren't enough events for software developers. It's called SoFlo DevCon. It's going to be Saturday, May 17th at Nova University. It's going to be an all-day event. We do have a call for speakers. You should register to apply to speak if you haven't. Same with you, Sean. And we hope to have over 1,000 attendees. So again, thanks for being a viewer, either live or on the replay. I'm going to have Jason introduce himself and then introduce our 2 experts of the day.
Okay, I'm Jason Hill. I am the founder of the Owwll app. But let's get into our guests today, because I do a lot of podcasting, but these 2 right here don't. So I want to bring them into this show and really learn about each of their businesses. And what's cool about this show is we form collaborations on the show with the guests themselves, but then also we call people on the Owwll app. And my hope is that we build more collaborations today on the fly, on the spot, because that is what Owwll is all about. So we got John Riley, which you guys could see right up on the television, and Sean. I could never pronounce his name. I've worked with him about 7-8 years. I'm like, Dudaviv. Yeah. I just say really, really quickly. And it spins off my tongue, of course. And they're both awesome entrepreneurs that we're going to learn all about right now. So to kick things off, John, give me your elevator pitch. 60 seconds. Tell us about your brand. Go for it.
Sure. So my name is John Riley. I'm the Chief of Emerging Tech for IMPACTIFI. And what we focus on is the expansion of companies that want to come to the U.S. and expand in the U.S. So you could be from South America or you could be from Europe and you land in Florida, of course, but also how do you navigate this space? So we help them through strategically understanding what their mission is, how successful they've been, but branding it in a way so their marketing fits here. We also help them through funding through either VCs, grants, or multilateral funding and strategic investments. but also emerging tech, which is my field, is how do we help understand, is your tech a fit for this space, right? Is it valid? You know, you're using AI, that's great. What other emerging tech can go with this to make you more valuable?
Wow, that was a good 60-second pitch right there.
He's good.
Clear, to the point.
He's
If
done.
I'm a company that's international, thinking about moving my business down here to South Florida, I completely understand that I need to call John. And of course, why not through the Owwll app?
Absolutely.
Pick his brain and move, to the nicest location in the United States, South Florida, of course.
He's done this before.
He has.
I tried. I practiced all last night.
Okay, Sean, you are up. You're usually,
I don't know if I'll be asked.
you're good behind the keyboard.
Yeah,
You
that's
worked
right.
on a lot of my websites. He did a lot of copywriting behind the scenes before ChatGPT, right? Before now, you could just ask it to write you a 200-page book in like 45 seconds.
That's right.
Back when writing was very, very important. And Sean did a lot of work with me behind the scenes in my financial service project. So I'm excited because all these years we always talked about you coming on a podcast together.
Right.
And we finally, after 6-7 years, making it happen today. So Sean,
Yeah.
give us your elevator
Yeah,
pitch.
the timing is everything. But yeah, so I'm currently the founder of Fruitful Ventures. It's a little bit of a pivot from when you and I started working together. We were purely focused on marketing. But basically, it is a entrepreneur coaching business, along with a performance-based marketing for startups and just companies that have plateaued. So what we do is performance, completely commission-based services and coaching, and also partnerships for startups that we see a lot of potential in. So if we see opportunity to scale, if we see that there's pockets where we can compete, and there are markets in the gap that we could take advantage of, then we basically partner up with these startups and help them scale as partners rather than just as service vendors.
So let me get this right. John brings the companies here,
That's right.
and then he sees this amazing emerging technology. Sean over here can run the whole back end for these brands. This is what we're talking about right now.
That's right. And
That's why I brought them together. See this? My job is done. I'm off the air. Jeff, take it from here.
All right.
Yeah, and what we've actually done too is, we worked with startups for over 10 years now, and what we do well is even companies that are more established that maybe have footprints internationally, we usually I would assume expand if they're plateauing, right? And so what we do is we take the startup methodologies and we help companies that have plateaued and help them grow beyond to the next stage, right? To kind of adopt that startup.
Can you give us a little bit more detail? Because you say grow, like the problem that I always have on LinkedIn is everyone telling me, oh, I could work with your business and help it grow by 10x, 1,000 million %. And I just get so many of these emails every day. So I want to literally dive deeper. Like, what are you really doing? And you could use a brand like Owwll as an example. Like, what are you going to do? First 7 days, you work with me together. Like, what are we speaking of?
Yeah. So basically, especially brands that have plateaued, right? What they do a lot of is what's worked, right? And because it's working, they just keep doubling down on that. And it has its diminishing returns, right? More investment.
Scraping the bottom of a barrel, we always say. Like the same old leads. And you're like, wait, but the leads aren't doing what they once did.
Yep. A lot of times, more investment into the channel that's working doesn't result in a better ROI or more leads or more revenue, right? And so what we do is help them go back to that startup methodology, which is just testing channels, right? Jim Collins talks about this, where it's like, if you're in a Navy battle in the fog, you're not throwing cannons in every direction. You're throwing pellets until you hear something, and then you're throwing a cannon in that direction, right? And so that's what we do with marketing channels. Because what people don't realize about marketing is it's not, okay, here's money, here's a channel, let's just dump it all. It's no, we have a channel, then we have different audiences in that channel, then we have different creatives that we have to test, different targeting, and different formats. So if you think about that in a way that you map it out, each channel has so many different opportunities and pockets to succeed in. And so what we do is we help them find those pockets, right? Whether it's organic social media, whether it's search. Now you have to pop up in AI results. We've actually gotten a few leads because people are searching in AI.
Yeah, of course.
And so trying to figure out how to get on that channel next, right? Because
really
that's an exploding channel. Yeah.
Correct. It's like looking up Google and you're like, different lead services.
And so user behavior is changing and you're constantly finding new pockets to compete in. And that's basically what we do is we test, right? You test different channels. And then once you hear something, once you see that, okay, I can compete here, that's when you put more revenue behind it.
Absolutely.
We maximize the bottom of funnel there. We always maximize the bottom of funnel first, where we can get closest to purchase intent as possible, right? So bottom funnel, think entrepreneurs that want to network, for example, right? They want to, Owwll is a perfect solution for them.
Of course.
So what we're going to do is we're going to try to target keywords. We're going to try to target conversations on social that people are trying to network. They're trying to grow their business. They're trying to expand their business in some way. And so how do we get in front of that person and say, hey, Owwll is a potential solution for you, right? And so that's kind of what we help them with, is run those tests and find those bottom funnel opportunities to really get to client acquisition or customer acquisition or user acquisition.
John, I want you to jump in now because this is so cool. Like, I didn't know this was going to happen live on air, but it's like you guys have so much in common, right? Because these companies come to the US and it's different marketing systems.
Absolutely.
Right.
I think that's the thing you see is, right, it's us understanding, okay, you're successful with that marketing strategy in your country, right? We've seen a lot come here and try to do the same exact thing, thinking, hey, but you understand, like, that difference in even the culture, right? Understanding the messaging has to be fine-tuned. And like you're saying, it's finding those keywords of where's this going to connect with it. So a lot of companies that we work with, we do kind of like the market research. We work with data scientists where okay, let's take your product, let's take what you're doing, let's go broad, wide, and deep, and saying, where exactly do you fit? Is it Florida, right? Is it this one sector? But based on what our data scientists saying and the data collected, the marketing strategy should be around here. Here's where your niche is, right? And it's really kind of getting, like everything, data is everything. Once you get the data and you look at that going, okay, let's look at what a marketing team going, what's been working, especially when now you have AI in there, right? It's automatically doing everything, but you want them to be different. You don't want them to be relying on AI to do the strategy. It's like, okay, it's saying this, but you know what? We have relationships here and we can walk you through the door over
Can
here.
you give an example of a real company you've worked with? Right, we don't have to use the name, but I see your brand all the time lately. A lot of your team members are up on stage, they're winning awards. You're a member at South Florida Tech Hub, of course. So I see
You're
you
in
at
our book,
events,
which we're going to talk about.
or in the Innovate book, right? So just use a real example, right? Because I think the audience that's listening, we hear so many of these generic stories, but we really want to hear like the real story. Like, explain like a scenario where it started step one with a conversation, and then how you led that business to eventually making that move here. And then what did you do? Like partnering with, venture capitalists, angel investors, funding strategies, kind of dive deeper, grant funding. I know you guys have done stuff on that level as well.
It's all those levels, and it's understanding where it fits. So we had a company come over from Spain a year ago, about this time. So they've been working with us for a year. So when they got here, they're very successful globally doing the things they did. But the messaging, even like with their website and what they're putting out there, when they got in the US market, was like, no one's going to pay attention to that. They were leading with emerging tech. We're experts in this. We're experts in blockchain. We're experts in this. I'm like, once people see that, they're automatically going to turn off. Let's switch this messaging to what have you been successful in and why are you important? Then let's tie it into your expertise globally, the companies. And then how do we get you in front of customers to share your expertise? So at that point, once we got that marketing and messaging down, getting them to present at different events, getting them to introduce them to executives or decision makers, and throughout the year, slowly but surely, started like that transformation of now getting into the culture, the ecosystem, what works, what doesn't work. And even though I've been successful where I was at, this is a different thing, right? It doesn't happen. I tell people, do you want to play chess? Do you want to play checkers? Which is it, right? Because if you're coming here to play checkers, we're not the right company for you, because you're going to bounce around going, oh, here's the thing. And it's transactional at that point. But if you really want to be strategic, the first 3 or 4 months, you're going to be like, let's get you the messaging. Let's get you comfortable with presenting it this way. Let's get you in front of different groups. Let's get you aligned with like South Florida Tech Hub and events like that, and allowing you to build the relationships in this ecosystem so people start to know your name. And then once we introduce you to customers or potential customers, we've walked you through the door. Now you need to close it. And then who else needs to come along with that? So we do have a large partner record, coming to marketing people, immigration lawyers, everything that comes along with that, to give them this feeling of security of you're actually doing this with me, not just for me.
Yeah. You guys have all the relationships already built in.
Yeah.
So when people need legal support, boom, here's a lawyer you could work with that works with similar businesses. Then you need an accountant. Then you need a marketing team, right? Then even real estate, I'm assuming, like real estate brokers, lots of times they need commercial space, right? They need their own house. They're moving here. They need a local realtor, right? It just continues and continues. And this goes back to relationships and how important they are in business. I recently posted on LinkedIn actually about the power of successful entrepreneurs. Always, when you peel back that onion, it is relationships. I have interviewed over 500 successful entrepreneurs, and they always talk about those early days, how those relationships made the largest impact to their success. And we could go to brands like Celsius, which, powers this podcast. And actually that brand was about to go under, before somebody wrote a very large check to keep them in business. And then their brand obviously is wildly successful today. Top 5 energy drinks based on all statistics. So it just shows you, like, but that one relationship wasn't there, that company would not be on this table today.
And they're locally based. I don't think a lot of people know they're a locally based company as well.
Boca Raton.
Boca.
There's really no such thing as a self-made entrepreneur, or a self-made group of people. Like it's always relationships that do that. I like what you said a lot about, taking the time to strategize, because what I found in my entrepreneurship years is that you could work really hard on something and run yourself into the ground as much as you can work really hard to succeed, right? So good decision making is important.
And you learn that, lessons learned, like through mistakes. I've had 3 different startups, and you go through the or you got that founder's vision of, it's going to be this way, it's going to be this way, and you start looking like, okay, but then you realize those strategic relationships that you build during that process, you could go back to, and then they're validating you, right? Like you are someone that someone wants to meet or work with, right? And if you don't, then it shows you don't have the right relationships. And I think that's huge. And Jason, this. I mean, you can have a relationship where you haven't talked to a person in a year, but they know who you are, they know what you stand for, and it's like, oh, you're doing something with them? Okay. Well, if Jason's vouching for you, then I'll talk to you, right? It's huge.
Absolutely. Let's talk about Tech Up for a second, right?
Yeah.
You guys are literally a nonprofit that helps foster relationships at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
Right? You created this book that has some very innovative brands in South Florida, but also all these events that you showcased earlier in the show. And really, it does come back to putting everyone together in the same room to foster opportunities together. Isn't that true?
Yes. So I want to give a shout out to, let me back up. So what is this book? It's a book that South Florida Tech Hub worked with the company that puts out the Innovate books. And we did it to highlight the region, not just one county or one city, but all of South Florida, which, by the way, on the back, and this is a test, what are those counties? Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach, Martin, St. Lucie, and Indian River. There's a test later on to remember those.
What do we get if we get the test correct?
You get a big thank you from me.
At the next event. What are we talking?
So you get a big thank you. Okay. So we put this book together with through our CEO, Nikki Caboose. If you're watching, hello, my boss. And I'm really proud to say that Al is featured in the book as well. A nice, whoops, I got that backwards.
It's okay.
By the way, we are live and in person. There are no bots on this show. There's no AI in this podcast.
We could turn into that later.
We might be bots at some point. So this is a nice two-page spread on Al. I think it turned out great. I think the book turned out great. But I'm also pleased to say that very nice 4-page spread on IMPACTIFI.
Ooh, how did you get 4 pages?
Yeah.
And nice
what
pictures.
Relationship do you have that I need to know about?
Exactly.
I didn't start this podcast like that.
Exactly.
If I had the podcast going, we'd have 2-3 pages of the different guests.
There you go. But some nice pictures of John and the founder, Terry, of the whole organization. So that's part of what, that's a large part of what Tech Hub does. Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you. We do build the community and help connect different companies. And that's a large part of what we do. And that's one of our 4 core pillars. So I had a kind of a follow-on question. Is there, because the Al community has a lot of different types of companies that are in the community. I'm just curious for both of you, is there a particular vertical you like to focus on, a particular size company, just to get kind of an order of magnitude? What have you found is a sweet spot for areas of focus for each of your companies?
Sure. Yeah, for me, I love startups. I love startups because I kind of been there, done that. I've built my own company. I've worked in a venture fund, scaled multiple startups. And during that process, I was looking for agencies myself. I was looking for marketing partners myself. And I found that people didn't really understand the startup process. It's not like starting a traditional business. It's not a new business. That's what people need to understand about startups. It's not a new business. It's not you starting your real estate agency. It's not you opening up your insurance office. It's disrupting a space. And if you're going to bring something new to the market, you need to know how to introduce it. You need to know how to test. And you need to know that not everything's going to work, right? There's no traditional cookie cutter approach that a million people have done before you that you know works, right? There's not somebody that you can find in your niche. And so for me personally, I love working with startups or just companies that have plateaued.
Is there any within the startup community? It can kind of vary. Is there any particular vertical, size of startups, stage of investment,
Yeah.
where they are in their solution,
Yeah.
or all of the above?
I
For
would
both of
say
you.
For me personally, it has to be, a tech company that's
Okay.
that's bringing something that doesn't really exist or doesn't exist well. I'll give you an example. I work with a company now called Yearbox, and they're an actual digital yearbook. There's been products like that have existed in the past, but it's a poor version of that product. And so the industry
You
is
mean
about
like high school, college
high
yearbooks?
school,
Okay.
middle school, college. And
Got it.
so that's about 15 years overdue. I can't believe we have AI and we're trying to send rockets
they
to
still-
Mars, but
are-
we don't have a digital solution
are-
for something kids to use. on their
Breaking
phone.
news. Are you telling me high schools and colleges are still doing printed yearbooks?
Exactly.
Oh,
And
boy.
they're way overpriced, right? So a more
Hey,
affordable.
we got the Innovate book right
Well-
here. Time out. There's
But we're not a yearbook. We're
there-
one of a kind.
there is something nice about a hardcover.
That's
book
true.
That stays
That's
there
true.
forever.
It's
But
not
I think we're talking about complimenting it.
Exactly. And it is a compliment to it. And so, I still have my yearbook, right? I still look at it periodically, but I also have a best friend in middle school that I can't find. His name is, Emmanuel Vasquez. If he's listening, find me.
I
But
know.
that's such a hard name to find online, right? It's a common name. And so I would love to get in touch with him. And something like a digital yearbook, you just search him up, you find them, boom, all the links to his socials are there.
Oh, that's
Can't
interesting.
believe
I
that
see what
doesn't
you're
exist,
saying.
right?
As simple as the
Updating life
connections.
events on Instagram. I don't want to see pictures of the steak you had last night, right? But I do want to know what's going on in my friends.
But I got to
lives.
piggyback that though,
Sure.
because just to fight that a little bit is what you're talking about is when that didn't exist with social media. But today, everybody who's graduating has Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn. So, and of course, Owwll. So, like, why, like, this next generation already has it. So, I understand for
They
past
do, but it's
generations.
specific to
Because, like, I want my old generations to have that. But, like,
Yeah.
you know what I'm trying, where I'm
Yeah,
going
for
with this. The
sure.
current ones don't.
Yeah, it's specific to, life events and the preservation of those events. So
Okay.
like in like a digital yearbook, for example, you can update like, oh, I just got married. I had a baby. And so it
Okay.
creates like a
I
nice
see what you're
little
saying.
timeline. And eventually it'll have like the features on a roadmap where it's like you can, that entrepreneur guy who has this type of hair that I knew, what's his name, and it'll pop up with a few guys that might fit that description. And so there's applications. So like that kind of technology, I'm really excited about. So I
Right.
want to partner with them, right? And kind of help them scale because I see opportunity. And then when you look at the traditional companies, they're not competing in the pockets that we can compete in. They're not taking advantage of digital marketing. They're still doing the old, face-to-face, shake hands, which is cool. It still works. But it allows us to kind of penetrate the market in the easier fashion because it's not as expensive to do SEO. It's not as expensive to do paid advertising. It's not as expensive to do social media marketing. And so we're able to actually scale in the way that has ROI, right?
I think you just like pain, Sean.
For me,
That's what this
well, for
comes
me,
back.
I just like
Because
this-
every time I talk to anyone who's working with startups, they're like, what am I thinking? What am I
love
doing? They
startups.
can't write big checks,
Yeah.
right? Especially the early stage ones. Like every dollar matters, and you're on a meeting where you're showing them the data, but then they're like, but they just
Yeah.
put too much emotion into writing the check,
Well, like
and that's why I say you must love pain.
speaking, I do a little bit. I like that's.
I
why
know you're a
picked
boxer, that's
entrepreneurship.
fine. That's
Yeah,
why I
that's
say
I
this.
picked entrepreneurship. But like, for example, the importance of a network, right? I think one of the things that got me really good at like lean marketing approaches and the whole startup process was I didn't have a network. I didn't have a way to raise capital. I didn't know any investors. I didn't know anybody. The way we met was actually in this office building, right? It was just me in the room and the computer, and I had to make it work. But had I had a network, had I had, an opportunity to reach out to people, my path might have been a lot easier, but it did make me good at just finding lean approaches to market. And so because I became good, I became valuable in that space. And when I was looking for agency partners, they had astronomical fees and they didn't understand the process. And so I said, okay, this is a pocket I could really drive a lot of value in, which is working with startups. And so it can be painful. Some of my clients haven't made it. They ran out of funding or whatever, right? But others have, and they've succeeded. And when you see that, you go, okay, wow, right? I was able to drive value here. And then it benefits you in the long run. It benefits them in the long run. And so that's why I like working with startups. It's not as certain as more traditional or established businesses, but it's more fun. It's exciting, and it forces you to be creative in how you approach it.
So what about for you, John? Within the startup community, is there certain verticals you like to focus on, or size of startups, stage of startups,
Well, I mean,
or all the above?
like Jason said, we don't like pain. So we don't really work with startups. It's usually the companies that do want to, they're plateauing and want to scale.
Okay.
Like Jason said, it's because they don't have the capital to pay or to invest in that time to go, okay, I need the support. I'm going to pay to get this extra support that I need. It's not saying we don't talk to startups. We do. It's got to be something that's, for lack of a better word, a unicorn. We're like, whoa, that's innovative. That's super disruptive. That's solving a problem that you guys really figured out. Let's see how we can support you on this, right? And then we bring them into the ecosystem of the startups and investors and saying, hey, this one has some meat to it. But besides that, we like to work with companies that are 2.5 million ARR and higher, and it's mid to large size companies. But it's also evaluating, okay, how can we make sure that you're successful, right? Do we have the relationships to introduce you to someone? And that's why I said we won't work with them, because if we don't think we can do it, or saying, hey, we don't have anybody in our ecosystem that can support this, then we have to pass them on to someone we know. Relationships of, hey, this company we can't work with, let's give them to someone that we know that can support them and give them the insight that they need. So for us, it's more in the lines of, how can we work with this mid-sized or large-sized company? How can we make sure that, one, they can invest and pay for our services, time, and everything that goes into it and building that relationship? But then how do we align them with other opportunities, whether it's through grants, right? Where we'll team them up with 2 or 3 other partners going, let's get you some non-dilutable funding, right? That you can leverage on a grant and also get more exposure, and saying, okay, now you're established here. Now you've got a grant. Now you're working with different companies, different partners, and it's allowing you to build this credibility. And that's the biggest and the hardest thing with a new company that's coming to the US or anything, is how do you help them build credibility where people are vouching for them in that region?
So, thank you both for being on the show. We had not met before, but I knew you'd be a great guest. I knew, John, you'd be a great guest. So I'm sure people are going to want to follow up. Why don't you, John, go first? Go ahead and spell out the URL of your company.
Yep.
And I know you're active on Owwll, but have you thought about what office hours you're going to have?
Sure.
And to make it a little easier, I put your profile up here. So
there you
everybody
go.
watching, it's right up here. Just follow him on Owwll, and his brand's up here, of course.
No, thank
You-
you.
URL of the website.
Sure. URL is IMPACTIFI, IMPACTIFI global.com. And for us, I mean, my office hours are usually between 9 and 10 a.m.
Eastern?
Eastern time.
Right.
It's funny. I started getting calls last week. I don't know. And I was in between the call and I was like, oh, hold on. I was like, I forgot I got the Owwll hours.
Pretty
Right.
cool. It's pretty cool. Right?
It is pretty cool.
I just ringed you.
Yeah.
Right.
And it was perfect. So, I had a conversation yesterday, and that's the fun thing about it, right? You set that little time frame up, and usually that's that time of my day. If I don't have a call, it's better
That
to get it
works.
in the morning than the afternoon.
Right. So also, people can reach out to you in LinkedIn,
Absolutely.
as I'm sure. And you, Sean, what's the URL of your website?
Sure.
Office hours on Owwll.
Yeah. If you guys want to reach out, the website is fruitfulmarketing.com. That's fruitful with 2 O's, FROOTFUL, the word marketing.com. And Owwll, I'm making a vow here to Jason, 11 a.m.
Guys are watching.
every
It's not filmed.
Tuesday. You guys can reach out to me. I'll be on. You guys can ask me anything about marketing, anything about growth, startups, entrepreneurship, even if you're just going through a rough patch, whatever. Anything related to growth and entrepreneurship, I can help you with. I've been through the ringer myself for many years. And yeah, excited to network.
You said 11 to 12
11
Eastern.
to 12, correct.
Yeah,
So
I think we're going to have to make a mission here. We're going to go back to 37 plus episodes, and we're going to do some big promotion for everyone, because I think now is the time, right? We've done all these shows, and everyone sees the value of the platform, but often we kind of like all human beings, we start using all these different technologies. We run to all these different events, and I think it's time to bring them all back.
I like
We
it.
get everybody on Tuesday. Everyone has spent at least 1 to 2 hours putting their office hours on. And then imagine this, everyone in this book is available to connect with and collaborate. Like, what would occur? What would the collaborations come from? Just every Tuesday, people being available and seeing where the conversations would take them.
I like it.
I like it too. So if you're out there,
Honestly,
you've been on the show, we're going to delete your episode if you don't go live on Tuesdays.
The reason I mention, and I always say Eastern, because Owwll is across all time zones in the U.S. So out in California, and it's interesting because you could be 5 o'clock here, end of day for us, but it's 2 o'clock in California.
Yeah.
The other thing about Owwll, you mentioned about going live, and I've had this happen to myself. I've talked to people that maybe on a Sunday, they have some downtime. I knew someone sort of like me, gets bored easily. So Sunday afternoon, didn't have anything to do. He went live on the Owwll app. 2 people called him, and he said they were great calls. So the other nice thing about the Owwll app, and Jason mentions this, and I think it's a great use case, not only to have specific office hours, but you can go live when you have half hour of dead time. For example, in South Florida, we're always driving. So you get in your car, you got a half hour dead time. If you're not listening to a replay of Tech Tuesdays, go live on Owwll. And it's interesting, like you said, you will get people that call you when you think you might not have people call you.
And
So,
I'm mostly criticizing myself here, honestly. I think
get out of here. You're
especially-
done. Get out of here.
especially if you're in a service industry, you're dumb not to use Owwll because your knowledge is your try me button. If you're walking in
Right.
a toy store, you see all these toys on the shelf. They're all talking about their features and it's nice, but the one that catches your eye is the one that has that button that lets you interact with it and show what it can do. And that's probably the one you're going to take home because you know what you're getting, right? And so when it comes to service, the only way they know what they're getting is if you tell them a little bit about what you know. You show off your expertise, right? And Owwll is a good opportunity to do that. Not to mention monetizing for influencers, right? If you want to give people an ability to get in touch with you and actually build a personal connection and build that actual personal brand, this is the way to do it, especially if you have an existing following already, right? So super powerful platform, and I'm excited to actually be on it consistently every week and showcase what I know, and I know I'm going to build some good connections here.
Hold them accountable. You heard
Okay.
it on. You heard it on air.
I know the value.
So
He will email
Spending
you
the time,
if you don't go on a Tuesday. He has the full ability
we're going to
Come
track
after
you down.
Come
We have
after
to track you down.
Jason and I.
penalize you.
Jason and I have a certain
Sheriff
set
in
of
town.
skills.
Yeah.
You get that reference?
Bounty hunters.
Yeah, great movie.
We are.
Do you want to?
Yeah, we're gonna call
okay.
people live
ahead.
on the Owwll app. So what Jeffrey was just mentioning is a little take call button. You could literally on the go hit a timer, say I'm willing to take calls, or turn yourself offline that quickly. So that's the beauty of this technology. These buttons that don't exist on LinkedIn, where you can't just spark a meeting out of thin air like you can on Owwll. Owwll has all these active people right here that are available to chat with. And what we're going to do is we're going to look for one together. Do we want to call someone in technology? Do we want to call a startup? So let's actually, Andrew has a startup. So there's one that we could call. Brandon is brand new. So I always have concern calling someone that doesn't know what's going on Tech Tuesday. So we have Daniel Hall. He's taken 453 calls, tech guru.
Wow.
There's a lot on LinkedIn. So let's see.
So we are live. We have not planned this. We are calling people at random that are available on Owwll. By the way, my office hours on Owwll are Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern. Give me a call. Happy to talk.
And
Okay,
what
I
Jason
think we're going to call Andrew because Andrew's got a tech startup. Startup. It's kind of techie, So, oh no, he's $45. Can't call him at $45. Jeffrey doesn't have that much money. Sorry, Andrew, you were about to get called. Your price is a little too high. We're going to call someone in the $1 to $10.
Jason makes a good point. You alluded to this. You can monetize your time on Owwll, but you want to have you want to think about how you price yourself, because like anything else, it is relevant to how much people are willing to spend.
100%.
Looking for someone in tech.
One of the things I was curious about for you is what are some of the things that surprise people the most when they're like trying to find a new market in a new country? Like for me, from a marketing brain, culture is huge, right? Like the culture, just the messaging and the way you approach the tone. But what about other things that like surprise companies that they have to deal with when they're transitioning? Because it's not just, I'm assuming, press a button and market here, right?
No, it's understanding, how to position themselves, but also even the culture in the area. So you're like, you look at South Florida, Miami's ecosystem is different than Fort Lauderdale and Broward. Broward's ecosystem is different than West Palm.
Yep.
Right. You're in South Florida. You think you're in Florida. Each region does business
Just
differently.
on its own. Yeah.
That's the hugest thing. And it took me, I've been here, when I moved down here in 2015 and trying to figure that out in 2017, blockchain was big. I was always going from West Palm Beach down to Miami, and then figuring out like, okay, the way they do business is different than people in West Palm. And then understanding that was huge. And it took me probably 2 or 3 years to realize, okay, how do I build the right relationships in each area? Going, okay, I know how I can work with here and I know how I can work here. And then who to reach out to. That's something you don't expect. You figure, hey, I'm in Florida. It's all the same. It's totally not. And we're just in South Florida. And then if you get up to Orlando and you get over to Tampa, those regions
In
work.
Tallahassee, very
Yeah.
different than the rest of
Yeah,
the state.
and
Jacksonville,
yeah,
very different.
very different. And that's something that you don't expect. Like, hey, I'm here and that's it. If you go to another country, usually that's the culture for the whole country.
Yeah.
The US, each market is different, from New York to Boston to California to Austin, Texas. Knowing how to do that and navigate it and meet the right people, there's a challenge, right?
You know, you mentioned something, just the culture. Part of my job is I do talk to a lot of startups and other companies, and we do have a lot of Latin American companies that want to expand. And in talking with them, I try to get them sensitive that yes, your product, hardware, software, services is great, but you've got to present it in a culturally acceptable. I shouldn't say acceptable. Resonates in that culture versus another culture, and it can vary differently culture to culture. I don't think a lot of companies are sensitive to that, so that is very important.
And that's part of that kind of the onboarding, when you're educating of, hey, here are things to think about, and here's why, or here's why we would recommend you change something on your messaging on your website, right? If they land there in the US, they might not take it the same way over in your region that you
exactly
with this, right? Because that's not important to them. What's important to them of how successful have you been? How can you solve their problem? And how can you make it easy, right? That, the simple understanding of, don't show up and throw up with, hey, here are all the functionalities and features of our technology. It's like, here's how we're solving the problem.
Right.
Oh, by the way, we happen to be using AI. We happen to be using blockchain in the back end. Then you're not trying to convince them. You're saying, we can solve your problem. Here's how we've done it for other people. It just happens to be that the tool we're using, this technology, happens to be this on the back end. Perfect.
Yeah. Benefit first.
Yeah. A lot of people, you hear now, AI, this. I have an AI project. I have an AI platform. And you're like,
it means
okay,
nothing,
Jeffrey, you said we come up with, like, I'm burned out, like AI saturation. So
no, it's true. And and when you talk to people, they just say, but you're like, okay, but what are you really doing? Like slow down. Like, give me like one sentence. What does the tool do to help my business?
Yeah.
And so often it goes right back to, well, it's just they can't explain it. Elevator pitch is absolutely horrible.
I think always the easy formula for anybody listening is feature, benefit, outcome, or I like to say feature, practical benefit, emotional benefit, right? I like to use an easy one. Noise canceling headphones is an easy example. You could say these are noise canceling headphones and leave it at that. But that's just a feature, right? You could say these are noise canceling headphones that will eliminate distractions so that you can focus on your work better. You could leave it at that because you communicated the practical benefit, but then you could say, so you could focus on your work better so that when you're off of work, you don't have to think about work and you could actually relax. Right. And so you communicate in that way. Any service.
He's good at that.
Feature,
I'm more direct.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I'm a New Yorker. I'm like,
yep.
They're like, I don't know about this app, Owwll. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm like, but 2 minutes ago, you're telling me how you don't have enough meetings. LinkedIn's not working. Instagram's not working. You've tried everything. And the only way to make money is to talk to people and have meetings, and meetings turn into sales and customers.
And so that works.
So I sit there, I'm like stop overthinking this app, go into the app every day and make 5 phone calls. Activity will lead to results. I'm like, everything else is an excuse.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, but the button over there doesn't click right. Or, oh, but their profile, I don't like how you have it on there. I'm like, none of that matters. It is a phone call.
Yeah.
Right.
Call the individual and be done. And that's what we're going to do right now. We got Daniel Hall.
All right.
Right. He is a tech guru. He's a international, 2X international best-selling co-author. And he has this thing called Spotify. And not Spotify, Spot a pod, because he's going after all these creators who fake engagement. And
let's give him a call.
A brilliant individual in the tech world. He's worked with some of the largest tech brands. And Daniel Hall is currently on Avail. We waited too long, guys. We waited too long. Let's see.
That's
maybe,
pretty funny.
He's offline after. Sorry, Daniel. You should have been watching Tech Tuesdays. So we're not going to be able. We're not.
That is pretty funny, actually.
Okay, so now I got to rewind.
We're live, folks.
And
we're live and in person. No bots. This is real.
And what we're going to do is look for. I'm trying to get someone within the tech world again. So we're going to look for someone in tech, because I don't want to call just a general individual. You guys are so correlated to tech, so I want to go after that on purpose. But I also want to call somebody that will pick up, of course. Okay, I know this person, Nazim. She's $20, but guess what? Too bad.
No problem. She's worth it.
Her. We're
I
calling her.
I don't know her, so I'll introduce myself.
She does a lot in tech, actually, so it would form a good relationship style partner. with you guys. Okay. Hey, what's up, Nazim? This is Jeffrey and Jason Hill. How are you?
Hi, Jeffrey. Hi, Jason. How are you?
Good. Are you cool with being recorded? You're on Tech Tuesdays, the podcast, of course, powered by South Florida Tech Hub.
Hi there.
Okay, she's in.
Yeah.
Okay, we got John and Sean on the show today, and they do a lot in the tech world. So we wanted to call you on purpose because I know you've helped brands expand very similar to what they're doing, and we think there could be a big collaboration three ways here because they run different businesses. Sean focuses more on the startup world and emerging brands, where John
Great.
works more with companies, that have a big checkbook already, 25 million of revenue or more. They're coming from other countries, though they want to shift into the United States, and he helps them really figure out the United States marketplace, especially South Florida. And Azim, you've done a lot. Can you tell everyone in, let's say, 30 seconds to a minute about your expertise and what you do and how you also do stuff in tech?
Yes. So, life and business consulting, we have a full turnkey service firm, white glove. I mostly like the side. We have a business marketing, business strategy. We have financial services. We help on the personal side as well. What differentiates from other consultants is the life side. So we're building out our coaching side of the program right now to help with leadership, personal development, and personal growth.
And what's your target market? Like, what type of clients are you looking for?
So I work with entrepreneurs, business owners, and business professionals. Personally, our whole team, we operate with pretty wide range, anywhere from startups all the way to large businesses. We have different specialists within our umbrella for those different sectors. Me specifically, I like to work with overachievers who are entrepreneurs, business owners, and business professionals.
Well, you're in a room full of them, that's for sure.
So dive in. Sean, you got a question for him?
Yeah, I do have a question. Actually, I would love for you to talk about, because, I'm kind of in a similar industry with you, and a lot of my time working with entrepreneurs, especially in the startup phase, is talking them off a cliff, right? So,
Yeah.
really, I would like you to talk a little bit about how much of an impact the life part of it has on the business part of it, because people like to view the business as something external to them, when really the journey is so much about you, the founder, the employee, and the person contributing. So if you can touch on that a little bit, and kind of what are some of the struggles that you've seen people overcome that impact the business positively?
Big life transitions. So I had a personal life transition that affected my ability to perform, reflecting on that, and it creates stagnation along with personal self-doubt, lack of confidence in decision making. And whenever you're on your own personal journey and going through those things, it can negatively affect your business when you don't have clarity within yourself and peace of mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. So much of entrepreneurship is decision making. And when you're not in the right mind state, you could make the wrong decision and spend the next 2 years working on the wrong thing, right? So you take the wrong path in the fork in the road. And so I agree that's super important, is to figure out how to still manage the business and have clarity of mind in those transitional stages, for sure.
There's a lot of also overcoming blockages that we have, and sometimes we don't know what we don't know, and it's nice to have. I like to say everyone should have a coach, and coaches should have coaches too. I have a personal coach myself, so that we don't always see our blinders to help us continue to grow.
Yeah, I like to use the example of, you take Tom Brady, you take Michael Jordan, you take Mike Tyson. Even though they were the best at what they do as athletes, they still had coaches. And that's because a coach, they may not even be better than the athlete themselves, but they can see from the outside what's going on, right? And when you're an entrepreneur, you're kind of in the battlefield the whole time. And so sometimes you don't see what's going on. You don't see the decisions, the wrong turns that you're taking. And so that's super important. Is there something that you do, like, that helps them overcome that, or what strategies do you take to kind of help them see, what's going on with them, if they're maybe making emotional decisions, or maybe they're not looking at opportunities a certain way because of what they're going through?
It's asking the right questions. And this is at a session with my coach last night. sometimes we don't know the right questions to ask ourselves.
Mhm.
And coming from an outside perspective, it's very helpful when there's questions asked to help lead us to our own answer.
Mhm.
No, and this is John. How's it going? No, I love what you're doing, right? Because I think the personal experience is the hugest thing. And a lot of entrepreneurs, when they go through it, you're in that grind every single day, right?
Mhm.
And it's the quality of life. And it comes down to almost sometimes your mindset of how are you dealing with it, right? Because you're a startup, you're in it. And I remember being in it doing one during COVID, and every day from 5 a.m., 7 days a week, I was not hanging out with my kids, wife, everything like that. And I remember, and I look back and I go, holy crap. Like, you see your mental state, it's all over the place, right?
Mhm.
And you're seeing, am I happy? Is there a time where I'm stepping out of this and I'm really unplugging, when I call it unplugging from the matrix, right?
Mhm.
From everything that I think is important to I'm in the moment, right? And it's forgetting how to be in the moment sometimes when you're an entrepreneur, because every second in your head is all about the business,
Yeah.
right? And what you're doing, I think, is great, because that's what people they either don't want to admit it when they're in it, or they don't see it. Like I said, you don't have that outside perspective of somebody willing to sit you down going, I just observed you and this is what you're doing, right? You don't even realize it. It's all on muscle memory because you've been doing it for so long. So I think, you sharing your experience, I think, is huge, because it makes it authentic of, hey, I've lived this life,
Mhm.
right? So I think you're doing great stuff, in my opinion.
Thank you. Yeah, I do feel that there's this this idea of being busy and you're on a hamster wheel, which is what my coach is saying. We were talking about that last night, is being on a hamster wheel. However, you're not making progress because you're taking action that isn't in the right direction, or intuitively what you see your life being or what you're trying to create, and being aware of that. So the pausing, and instead of doing more, doing less to then get clarity.
Yeah,
Yes.
for sure. Have you seen in the past where, fixing the personal has helped the business grow?
100%.
Yeah.
It's I'm I'm a factor to that, to that statement personally. When I was,
Mhm.
again, going through my own personal life transition, and our team in general. So we have a few different affiliates. We have the Purpose Engine, and the people on there are coaches, all been through some life transition, and talk openly about that, and how working on ourself has exponentially helped our businesses.
Yeah, I think honestly, and Jason, you spoke about this in the past.
Oh,
I
a
think
million times,
nobody
yeah.
knows that better than you. I mean, the amount of things that I've seen you go through
Thank
while
you.
having to deal with so many different businesses and scaling a new one.
No one even knows about those
Yeah,
businesses.
no
one really knows.
I know, but
They
I
just think
know.
I'm just the founder of
Yeah,
Owwll.
but I know, and
You
so
do know.
it's insane. I honestly don't know
Still
how
happening
you
right
do it,
now.
right? Because like I find my path. I've heard a saying recently where it's like, if you put everybody's problems in the pile, you probably take yours back and walk off.
Of course.
And that's how I feel when I hear
Thank you.
when I kind of watch you go through your story,
Yeah,
right?
you've
Like
seen it all.
everything that you went through, it's insane. It's
I'll
insane.
give
So-
the cliff notes of
Yeah,
that
yeah.
story. But I am actually becoming a book author this Friday.
Oh,
There
yeah.
will be a release 4 to 6 o'clock at Barnes and Noble. I'm one of the 8 co-authors in the book, and I do share a lot of those details. I moved down to South Florida in 2017, and I cut back 50% of my income in the financial service business. And I then had to adapt. I started the Shrimp Tank, and I started building websites. And Sean was the one behind a lot of these websites, helped me scale to over 100 leads a month in the financial service space. It was very difficult to do, and no one else was doing it. And then I'm managing all that while managing 2 young kids, under 5 at the time. Now they're 8 and 10.
Yeah.
And then I have this wise idea, once I get my income back to normal, and also hiring right through this whole process, an entire team down here, plus managing my team in New York. And then all of a sudden I'm like, let's build Owwll. Right. So now I built Owwll, multiple podcasts. So there's so many darn moving parts that go on forever. And to kind of piggyback the last 30 seconds while Nazim is here, is I started these challenges with fitness and also mindset with Owwll. I just can't do them every month, man. But every time we do these 30-day challenges, everyone comes back with such amazing results.
Mhm.
My business always grows with Owwll. It's always the best month in Owwll's history whenever we do these challenges. So completely agree with what Nazim is saying. Is just, your mindset is everything in entrepreneurship, and doing everything in collaboration. as a whole. So Nazim, thank you for joining us. We'll chat a little later. And guys, caller on Owwll.
Absolutely.
Take care.
Good to meet you.
Thank you.
Okay, that's our Owwll call of the day. Pretty good one.
Yeah.
Really good.
I want to shift gears a little. So it's important to have fun in life. But I think sometimes we can be serious. So I'm going to be serious for a minute. And what made me think of this is Memorial Day is coming up. So a little personal history for me. My father was in the 81st Airborne, World War II. Went to paratrooper school. You really have to be a badass to be a paratrooper, which he was. Went to Paris Island, famous paratrooper school, served in the Pacific. And he was always very proud of that experience, which he should be, and he was. So, John, I want to shift gears a little. I know a little of your backstory. You were in Desert Storm and Desert Shield. Would you mind sharing a little? First of all, thank you for your service. Sharing a little of that history.
No, yeah, it was, I wanted to be, it's funny, I wanted to be a Marine since I was a kid, right? So I remember being in 4th grade, and my dad was in the Navy, he was on submarines, and watching, outside of war movies, and I had a neighbor whose father was a Marine, and, a big athlete, and he kept saying, he goes, you should be a Marine. I didn't even know what a Marine was at the time. Marine, like, whatever. So I started looking it up, and I got that poster with the guy with the camouflage face on it back then, and I'm like, yeah, I want to be a Marine. And through high school, even playing sports and getting offered scholarships, I left 2 days after I graduated high school and went to boot camp, Paris Island. So once I
didn't realize you served at Paris Island as well. I didn't know that.
So went to Paris Island, and after that, and 6 months later, go to school, and then Desert Shield was going on, and then the war. So I was over there by November of 91 or 90, and then straight to the desert. So that experience was eye-opening, right? 6 months ago, I was just playing lacrosse, right? Championship game. And now 6 months later, I'm in a war. So that kind of opens your life up to the world. But I was like, all right, this is what I signed up for. So that whole experience, you go through that, my unit was the first one through the minefield that morning. Get through the minefield. It's a whole other story. But then you get home, and then you're like, okay, at that point, I had 3.5 years left on my contract. So I was like, all right, I am not even remotely done. This was just the first year of just being in the Marines. Then you go back overseas. You go to, this is when Yugoslavia was still there. The whole stuff of, no-fly zone and being over the Mediterranean. But that experience, right, it's huge. You don't realize it at a young age how important it is, right, how it affects you. Because you're still young. You're in your early 20s, and you're like, okay. It wasn't until I got out where you're like, you look back on, okay, I did something that was part of history, right? It doesn't hit you, and then you bump into other people or veterans,
right?
Or people say, hey, thank you for your service. And then it starts to sink in like, okay, yeah, that was pretty big, right? And just that, what you learn kind of that, I tell a lot of people as entrepreneurs is you learn how that word fortitude becomes very, very important in everything you're doing, right? Mm-hmm. That mental toughness is, do I have it in me to do one more step, one more thing, one more call, like Jason was saying, I'm making that call, or I just want to just give it up now. And that's kind of like that military mindset of you can't stop, no matter, either you got somebody to support or you got a business partner that you don't want to let down. How do I keep going? How do I keep pushing through? And you kind of bring that into, your everyday life and not getting wrapped up in it, but you leverage the good, the bad, and the relationships of it. But it's also, I'm very patriotic. I love my country regardless. So I love that part of it. So when I think about Memorial Day and I think about guys that didn't come home, we just got done being, for the first time in this country, seriously in a war for like 22 years, like since 2001 and 9/11 to like 22. I mean, that's never happened in this history.
Right.
These kids grew up, they knew nothing about war. Right. And then you're like, oh, wow, that's another expertise. And I talk to young veterans and I go, all right, that's a whole different mindset in the world that you lived in. You're in 5th grade in 2000, 9/11, and you went to war by 2015, everything else. And you're like, wow, you've only known war. So it's the first time where we're not in this consistent war mindset of enjoy what we have, appreciate what we have as a country, of this freedom, this expertise of, wow, people are willing to make sacrifices. Like your grandfather, World War II, and I look at that war, especially in the island.
No, he was actually my father. I'm sorry if I say grandfather.
Sorry. Your father, you look at the history of the islands at that time with the Japanese.
Right.
Those were some of the hardest battles during the war.
Right.
They were ruthless, and you go, anyone that lived through that lived through
Thank you.
Experience.
Now, he was very proud, and he saw a lot of combat, and he was very proud of that. And as you alluded to, that whole experience did shape him for the rest of his life as well. So thank you for that. I just wanted to. I knew your backstory, so I wanted to mention that.
Yeah, I
Thank you.
find that the military people who do well in business do really well. In my opinion, part of that is that you win or you get killed kind of mindset, right? Which is the biggest motivator. But there's also like the discipline and the grit that you learn. Is there like, what do you think, like in your experience, what's the one factor that helped you the most, like to carry over from that to the business world?
It's kind of good and bad, right? That whole thing was, I don't want to give up. I don't want to fail. Right. And then as an entrepreneur, you have to get to a point going, I really need to walk away from this because I'm wasting my time.
Not working.
And you have to know that balance is hard, right?
You mean like what happens with Owwll like every 3 months? Every week on Friday?
Yeah. You have that mindset where you're by yourself. And I always call it when, those entrepreneur demons whispering in your ear, like, should I really keep going? Do I really want to keep doing this? And then you're going, no, I'm going to do this. And then one person comes along, like, no, you're just great stuff. And it hits you. But that's the battle you deal with all the time. And as veterans, we don't want to lose. No, we don't want to ever give up. No, we don't want to say we want to fail. But you have to understand you have to get to a point of, okay, well, maybe I do need to retreat. Maybe I do need to step away because I'm hurting myself if I keep this mindset and keep going. So that took me a while to figure that out and going, all right, I have to wash my hands of this because I'm wasting too much money on this and I need to step away because I'm not going to be successful at this.
Yeah.
And that's, some veterans get it, some don't. I've met some great, veteran entrepreneurs, and I know you work with the vets as well,
right?
That have a great mindset and get into that, but they're learning of taking that attitude and how do you mesh it together in a way that makes sense, where you take the good part of it and don't get wrapped up in that, that founder's journey of, I need to do this. I need to be successful.
So I'm sure you're willing to. So there's a pretty diverse Owwll community. I'm sure statistically we have many vets that are on Owwll. I'm sure you're more than happy to talk, to mentor them, and in any way, and you as well.
Sure.
So side note, we had Jessica Beaver on a couple of weeks ago from the runway at Florida Atlantic University, and they work very much with Veterans Florida at Florida Atlantic University as well. So there are a lot of programs, and even at our Ignite events, our startup, we have a separate track just for veteran founders. So we try to do what we can in Tech Hub as well. So actually Ignite will be coming up this summer, and I know we're going to have a veterans track there as well. So just thank you for that.
No problem.
It's that time, folks.
Saddest part of the day.
Thank you. It's the
week, right?
It's the saddest part of doing Tech Tuesdays, but as in life, things do come to an end. So I think we're going to kind of wrap up. Thank you, John. Thank you, Sean. You were a great guest. As well, I knew John was. I didn't know you, but I kind of felt you would be, or Jason wouldn't have you on. So thank you for that.
I hinted he'll be a great guest.
We've done 36 of these, so we have some idea of who's going to be a good guest. So why don't we do what I like to call go around the horn, and I'm going to let Sean, then John, then Jason, and then I'll wrap up the show. So Sean, anything you want to mention we haven't mentioned, correct anything we've said, focus on anything that we haven't talked about. Parting shots.
No, I mean, if you guys want to, check out more of me or how I think, you guys can read some of the books that I've published. I've published The Happy Sales System, which is like an ethical approach to selling that, some of which I touch, like a benefit, a feature benefit outcome kind of approach to selling that doesn't require you to be high pressure, be manipulative or any of that. Super short book, and impactful, if I say so myself. And then another book called Help Yourself, which is basically just dismantling all the lies that you get in self-help. Growing up, I didn't really have too many role models. I had to figure everything out myself. And there was so much junk that I consumed that through trial and error just didn't work. And so, I kind of talk about some of that stuff and some of my experience there. And then, as far as any entrepreneurs out there that want to speak to me or, turn the fork in the road into a fast lane, you guys can reach out to me and I'll help you make some right decisions.
So office hours, 11 to 12 every day?
On Tuesdays.
Tuesdays, 11 to 12 Eastern. You can call Sean. Spell your last name quickly as well.
The last name is Dudayv. That's Dudayev.
Okay. Thank you for that. Also LinkedIn. And what's your website again?
The LinkedIn is Sean Dudayev. So /Sean Dudayev. You guys will be able to find me there. And then the website is fruitfulmarketing.com, but that's fruitful with 2 O's.
Not O-U-T, O-O-T.
A lot easier. Just go to Owwll and then
there you go.
Him there, and he has all the socials connected to his Owwll account.
All right, John, parting thoughts?
No, I mean, for me, it's Anybody wants to connect with Al, that's great. I'm big on relationships first. Doesn't necessarily have to be in technology. I love speaking with people from different backgrounds, insights. That's where I learn the most. Sometimes when it's not in my sector or technology field, I love that because we talk about this and we live in this world every day. So if anybody wants to just have that conversation, I'm open to that. So reach me out on Al. You can get me through LinkedIn on Al as well. And my office hours are usually Monday, 9 to 10 in the morning.
9 to 10 Eastern, and URL of your website?
It's IMPACTIFI, IMPACTIFI global.com.
All right. Thank you. Jason, then I'll close.
I'm easy. Just call me on Owwll. I charge $99 for a 10-minute call. But if you put a deposit in, I will refund that $99 back to your Owwll account. I just want to make sure that you're taking my time serious on the Owwll platform. So when everyone reaches out to me all the time and says I'm hard to get in touch with, I argue the point that I'm very easy. You just got to take my time very seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff,
Thank you, Jason.
floor's all
So
yours.
thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Did I call you Jason? No. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, John. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Steph. Thank you, America. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We'll be here next week. Have a great day.
Have a good one, guys.